The Donald says nope. 883 words just hit our inbox shortly before we went on the air. A feature story length statement from the Donald, an unusual one, about his now famous comments about Mexican immigrants that he made on the day he announced he was running for president. Trump's statement simultaneously stands by what he said, but sounds, for him, uncharacteristically defensive in trying to justify his remarks. You can read the whole statement on our website. Trump's statement has become the dominant matter in Republican presidential politics of late. Every Republican presidential candidate has been asked to comment on Trump's original statement. So how to respond? One school of thought says, show some sympathy for the man.
I salute Donald Trump for focusing on the need to address illegal immigration. The Washington cartel doesn't want to address that. He has a colorful way of speaking. It's not the way I speak, but I'm not going to engage in the media's game of throwing rocks and attacking other Republicans. I'm just not going to do it.
So Ted Cruz and Rick Santorum showing some sympathy for Trump, not going after him. On the other end of the spectrum, there's another school of thought that says hit him hard.
This is a guy who was a Democrat for most of the last decade. I don't think he represents the Republican Party, and his views are way out of the mainstream of what Republicans think. He's not a stupid guy, so I don't assume he's like, he thinks that every Mexican crossing the border is a rapist. I mean, so he's doing this to inflame and to incite and to draw attention, which seems to be his organizing principle of his campaign.
I've said very clearly that Donald Trump does not represent the Republican Party. I was offended by his remarks. He's going to have to defend those remarks. I never will.
By the way, after Jeb Bush made those comments, Trump wrote on Twitter that Jeb Bush likes, quote, Mexican illegals because of his wife. That tweet was later deleted. And, of course, there's another way to respond, somewhat in the middle. Chris Christie and others who basically have said Trump is a good guy who said a bad thing. So, Heidi, all the Republicans are responding in different ways. What is the best way, not just in this case, but in general, to deal with the controversial Mr. Trump?
The best way they had all hoped to deal with him was to just kind of ignore him. He's the reality star, you know, with the funny hair that they all just kind of wanted to ignore. But what this shows is they can't ignore him, especially when he's making comments that many view as inflammatory.
And bad for the party.
And bad for the party.
No way to ignore Donald Trump. And the reality is, this is why people doubted he'd ever run, because he's a different breed. And people are going to talk about him. And if he says controversial things, as long as he's on the stage, they're going to have to answer.
I would add, Mark, that I think that they really took too long, though, to respond to this. They're going to have to take this as a lesson. They took 12 days to respond to these comments. In the future, they're going to have to be on it. They're going to have to do their research, and they're going to have to be prepared for these hits.
Mitt Romney, who took Trump's endorsement in a high-profile way 4 years ago, also criticized Trump. I want to see if somebody comes out and hits him harder and says he doesn't belong in this race. I'm not saying they're going to do it, but at some point, because Trump's tendency is to go after people who go after him, at some point somebody's going to face a real face-off with Donald Trump. It's going to be quite a moment.